President venal houseplant and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden is in the news today for the same reason he is often in the news. Because he fell flat on his damn face while trying to shuffle from one location to another after mumbling nonsense sounds from a podium for 20 minutes to a crowd of thoroughly confused onlookers. You'll notice I said shuffle instead of walk because I don't think walk is really an appropriate descriptor of what Joe Biden does when he attempts to engage in pedestrian locomotion. If the dude has to lift his foot more than 2 inches off the ground, Grandpa's basically going down. That's all there is to it. Fortunately, it didn't appear the president was seriously hurt during this latest public faceplant. That is the literal kind of faceplant as opposed to the figurative type, which he does suffer with even greater frequency. He was immediately examined by the White House medical staff, who asked him how many grandkids he has, and when Joe answered the question incorrectly, they knew he didn't have a concussion. Now, when he has these falling incidents, this latest one makes about half a dozen, right? There's always that terrifying moment when he's in midair, and you know he's going down, and it looks like he's going to go down pretty hard, and you think, my God, that man is literally going to turn into dust when he hits the deck. They're going to rush to his aid, and there will be nothing left but a pile of hair plugs and dentures. Or maybe I'm the only one who thinks that. I guess it's a possibility. And look, if you're expecting me to take the low-hanging comedic fruit and make a bunch of way too easy jokes at Joe Biden's expense right now, well, I'm here to tell you that's exactly what I'm going to do. So for those fans keeping score at home, here is the updated list of things Joe Biden has been defeated by. The airplane stairs, the airplane stairs again, the airplane stairs a third time, a bicycle, a sandbag, 9th century Islamic goat herders, and the Easter Bunny. Furthermore, there is absolutely no truth to the scurrilous rumor that Joe Biden's favorite movies are Legends of the Fall, The Harder They Fall, Falling from Grace, All Fall Down, After the Fall, Fall Time, Fall of the Mohicans, Falling Down. And you're the unwitting victim of a Russian disinformation scheme if you believe Joe Biden's official iTunes playlist contains the following songs. A Hard Rain's A-Gonna Fall by Bob Dylan. I Fall to Pieces by Patsy Cline. Falling Down by Duran Duran. Free Fallin' by Tom Petty. Falling Back by Marianne Faithfull. We All Fall Down by Aerosmith. Fall Again by Michael Jackson. Falling Into You by Celine Dion. If Anyone Falls by Stevie Nicks. Fallin' for You for Years by Conway Twitty. The Next Time I Fall by Peter Cetera and Amy Grant. Hero Takes a Fall by the Bangles. I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down by Elvis Costello. Embrace Another Fall by Robert Plant. Falling Like Rain by the late, great Tina Turner. And you know, speaking of Tina Turner, I don't think I've ever told you fine people the story of how I once jammed with Ike Turner. How about let's do that on the other side of the open? Well, I know you've heard the story, dickhead. You're not the one who matters. My God. I didn't even ask for your opinion. From atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we are told the Department of Justice has just declared not flying a rainbow flag for Pride Month a Class 2 domestic terrorism felony, punishable by 5 years in Gitmo. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. American, all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your opponent's host and humble servant. I'm not exactly sure what year this happened. It feels like it was 95, 96, somewhere in that period, so I'm still quite young, 22 at the very most. The location was Guitars West, San Marcos, California, which was a fantastic little guitar shop. The sort of fantastic little guitar shop that every town used to have, up until Guitar Center decided to become the Walmart of the musical instrument business by opening up more locations than freaking Starbucks and thus killing almost instantaneously nearly all small independent guitar shops everywhere, which is a hell of a damn shame, of course, because places like Guitars West used to be places you would go to just hang out and not necessarily buy anything. Just to see who was down there at the moment, or if they had any awesome new guitars or amps to look at. You replace that with a big national corporate monolith like Guitar Center, and you lose all of that. The whole sense of musical community that you had with small local guitar shops, but Enough with me waxing nostalgic about how much better things were in the old days. Guitars West was just a shitty little building on an otherwise big vacant lot, somewhere between a shack and a small house, and it was across the street, catty corner, from a cowboy bar called Leo's. There were two main bars in San Marcos where the local yokels went to on the weekend. The rockers and the heavy metal types, they hung out at the Long Shot, and the shit kickers and the Mexicans normally hung out at Leo's, where Ike Turner himself just happened to be in residence on the weekend in question. How an artist of his stature winds up playing shitty cowboy bars in suburban San Diego in his early 60s, I still have no good explanation for that. But a buddy of mine happened to be in the market for a new bass, so he pops by my house unannounced on Saturday morning, as people used to do before cell phones existed, and he asks me if I want to go with. Sure, I say. And I kiss hot young lady curmudgeon goodbye, and off we go. We get to Guitars West. We spend 20 or 30 minutes checking out the basses they've got on hand. He plugs a few of them in. Then he settles in on one that he thinks he likes, so he asks me to take it for a test drive and see what I think. I'm not a bass player. I hate playing bass like I hate few other things in this life, because these are not bass player fingers. But whatever I say, hand her on over and I'll give her a spin. About this time, Ike Turner's bodyguard / hype man enters the establishment for the express purpose of making sure everybody in the place knows that Ike motherfucking Turner is about to ingress the premises, so you people should all be happy that fate has shined upon you like this today. And not only is Ike about to come in that door right now, but he is in a guitar buying mood, baby. Now, I was off in the far corner of the store. I've got my back turned, trying to get the amp to cooperate that I was plugging into. So I'm hearing all this kind of half-heartedly and not paying a whole lot of attention at first, until my buddy taps me on the shoulder and says, "Dude, did you hear that? Fucking Ike Turner's coming in here right now." Now, I have only one time in my entire life seen a 5'2" black man decked out in a gigantic white Stetson, white sequined cape, white sequined cowboy outfit, and white sequined cowboy boots, which I think were ostrich. But this was that time. Because when you're Ike goddamn Turner and you're doing a weekend residency at some shitty cowboy bar in San Marcos, California, well, you go big or you go home, son. Ike doesn't get 10 steps into the store without buying the first 3 guitars he sees. He goes, "I want to buy that guitar, I want to buy that guitar, I want to buy that guitar." And he gestures over to his hype man, who duly produces like a 2-inch thick stack of hundreds and starts peeling bills off. But then Ike stops him, because the whole point of this exercise, obviously, was to produce the fat stack of cash and start waving it around like a big magic dick. They've probably done this same shtick in 100 different guitar shops in 100 different shitty little towns. You can tell they've got the lines and the timing practically down to a science. Now, wait a minute, don't pay the man yet, says Ike. There might be something else around here that I want to buy. So another 8 or 10 minutes pass. The shop owner shows Ike a few of his vintage Strats. It was only Strats that Ike seemed interested in buying this day, which, as a Gibson man, I can't really conceive of, but to each his own, I guess. Meanwhile, I had stopped paying attention and gone back to noodling around with this bass. But at some point, Ike decides there's a guitar and an amp that he might be interested in buying both of them. But he needs to plug the one into the other and see how they sound before he's sure, which is a pretty big departure from walking into the store and buying the first 3 guitars you set eyes on in the first 30 seconds, but I digress. So Ike plugs the guitar in, gets it tuned up, turns the amp up really loud to the point where I can't even hear myself over whatever it is he's doing. So I crank up my own amp so I can hear myself and then go back to minding my own business. The next thing I hear is, "Boy!" Then it comes again, louder this time, "Boy!" My buddy shoves me and said, "Dude, I think Ike Turner is talking to you." You don't say. I turn around, and I find Ike staring directly at me saying, "Boy, what key you in?" And I answered the question in the way that any anonymous young boy should answer such a question from someone of that stature. I said, "Mr. Turner, sir, I am in whatever key you want me to be in." And Ike liked that. That got a smile out of Ike. He says, "Cool, play me a 12-bar in E." Since I'm not a bass player, it was a bit of a relief that he asked for the simplest thing you can play on a bass and not something that requires any actual aptitude. I'm not going to make more out of it than it was, but I acquitted myself well enough to get a handshake and an attaboy out of the deal, and Ike was gone out the door with his 5 new guitars and his new amp. And frankly, I had no idea what an astoundingly good guitar player that guy was, since being a lead guitarist wasn't even among his top 3 or 4 claims to fame, but my God, that dude could play. So there you go, there's my Ike Turner story. That's it. It's not as good as the story of Malcolm Young pulling me off a fence, but I think it's a solid number 2 in any event. So what else do we have today? Oh God, it's only day 2 of Pride Month. And if it feels like it's already been going on for 17 weeks, in fact, if it feels like Pride Month never really ends, like the woke liturgical calendar just recycles back to June 1st every 30 days, I think you're probably not alone in that feeling. But one does get the impression this time around that the people who peddle this garbage might have some sense that they and their racket are living on borrowed time. So we've got companies just falling all over each other now, trying to out-woke the other guy. Like a bunch of sloppy winos trying to pound 5 more drinks in 2 minutes before the bar closes. Like the RMS woke Titanic is careening toward the cold, hard iceberg of sanity and everybody's fighting for the last lifeboat. And how delightful it is that children's entertainment brands are where the front lines are in the sex and gender wars now. Even as the people who run those brands insist that you are a filthy right-wing conspiracy theorist if you suspect them of child grooming. Shut up, bigot! What, just because we're trying to retrofit every old children's entertainment property into having a message of gay and trans positivity? Just because we're tweeting out that 70-year-old Bugs Bunny cartoons were all about affirming and celebrating drag queens? That's a real thing. I am not making that up. Looney Tunes, apparently tired of seeing Disney having all the child grooming fun, they tweeted out a message today. It was all of the times Bugs Bunny wore a woman's clothing as a disguise, in which they assert, evidently in complete seriousness, that the intention behind these cartoons from the 1950s and 60s was to celebrate drag queen positivity, which would probably come as quite a shock to the men who actually wrote and produced those cartoons, but who today are far too dead to defend themselves, so isn't that freaking convenient? Honestly, I scarcely know where to begin in unpacking the stupidity and the dishonesty of this latest one. First of all, and I can't believe this needs to be said, but Bugs Bunny is a cartoon. Cartoons exist for children to laugh at. When Bugs Bunny dons women's attire, it's for the purpose of concealing his identity so he can defeat Elmer Fudd. The intended reaction on the part of the viewer is for children, because that's who watches cartoons, to laugh at the stupidity and obliviousness of the villain of the piece. Look, Bugs Bunny's standing right there, but Elmer Fudd doesn't know it because he's wearing lady clothes. What a maroon! Now, frankly, if you can glean a message of drag queen positivity from a Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd cartoon, I feel like you've never actually watched a Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd cartoon, and I feel like you're a crazy person. And speaking of that, can someone please explain to me how and why drag queens have apparently taken over the thing that they used to call Gay Pride Month, then they called it LGBT Pride Month, then they called it just Pride Month, and now it's just Pride. Happy Pride was the opening salutation on the Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny drag queen tweet. Feel free to call me pedantic, you won't be the first. But no matter how long you make the stupid acronym, all the way from LGBT to LGBTQIA2 plus minus divided by sign, there still is no D there, because drag queen is not a sexual orientation. A drag queen, and I still can't believe we have to go over this, is a dude who dresses up like a caricature of a lady because he's a weird, creepy pervert and he gains sexual gratification from it. That is what a drag queen is. That is all a drag queen is. Bugs Bunny, on the other hand, is a cartoon rodent from the 1950s who occasionally donned women's clothes in order to gain a tactical advantage over his foe and create opportunities for slapstick humor for kids. Every small child who ever watched a Looney Tunes picture understands that. But the grown adults who own and operate the Looney Tunes brand today evidently do not. When they watch Bugs Bunny cartoons, all they see is affirmation and encouragement for disgusting sex perverts. And that is the state of children's entertainment here in the year of our Lord 2023. But when Looney Tunes ups the ante You bet your sweet ass that Disney is going to be there to pick up that gauntlet, and I think I just mixed my metaphors, but the hell with it. And so, right on cue, almost before the paint had dried on the Looney Tunes Bugs Bunny Drag Queen Positivity tweet, Disney boldly raises the stakes by debuting their brand new line of Pride-themed onesies for infants and toddlers. God, I so often wish I was making this stuff up, but alas, I am not. No, of course we're not trying to sexually groom children. Shut up, homophobe! We also read today that in the United Kingdom, otherwise known as America 5 years from now if we don't get our shit together pronto, the parents of new babies are being asked to fill out a questionnaire asking whether their newborn infant identifies as gay or trans. And that one I really, really so desperately wish I was making up. Of course we're not trying to sexually groom children. We just need to know if your 2-day-old baby requires gender-affirming care, that's all. Shut up, transphobe. Meanwhile, on the cultural imperialism front, the State Department decided it would be a lovely idea to fly the dumb rainbow flag over the U.S. Embassy to the Vatican, which, admittedly, is not quite as shockingly reckless and stupid as flying the dumb rainbow flag over our embassy in Kabul 30 days before Joe Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan was, but still. Why do it except to openly mock Catholicism and offend Catholics, at a time when we have an allegedly Catholic president, no less? I wonder what Senator Joe Biden would have said 30 years ago if you had asked him about the propriety of flying a gay pride banner over the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See. In fact, I wonder if one single Democrat would have supported such a thing 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. But we're in a different world now, a world where celebrating non-normative sexualities trumps everything else. It trumps diplomacy, it trumps the rule of law, it trumps any concept of basic decency, it trumps the innocence of childhood, which simply isn't allowed anymore. It trumps free speech, it trumps common sense, it blunts the effectiveness and the credibility of our armed forces. It reduces us to a laughingstock on the world stage in many places and an outright cultural tyrant in others. Look, boys, if you want that delicious foreign aid to keep rolling, then we're going to need to see a lot of gay pride flags and George Floyd statues in your capital city. Capiche? If you want to have a good diplomatic relationship with the United States, we're going to need to see lots more kids getting transed. Because we don't do business with countries that don't share our American values. So you best get to work hacking some sex organs off some little boys and girls if you know what's good for you. We are told, quite frequently, that slavery is the worst thing that ever happened in America, or indeed in the rest of the world in general. We're told that involuntary human servitude is the absolute nadir of human depravity. But you know what? Slaves usually got to keep all their body parts. And it was possible to be freed from slavery. Is it possible to be freed from gender-affirming care? Not once you've chopped off your wedding tackle and permanently altered your body chemistry, it isn't. A person held in involuntary servitude enjoys the prospect, however remote, of one day gaining their freedom and living a full life as a complete person. A person enslaved by the cult of gender-affirming care enjoys no such prospect. They are permanently and irretrievably altered, often well before the age at which they are legally permitted to get a tattoo or an ear piercing. And I'm still waiting for a good answer to that question from any self-styled proponent of gender-affirming care, quote unquote. If it's not okay to put a tattoo on a minor child, and I have never heard anybody suggest otherwise, why is it okay to cut off his testicles? For thousands and thousands of years, every society the world over arrived independently at the same conclusion, that it is the duty of adults to prevent children from making permanently life-altering choices whose ramifications they are too young to appreciate. That is why the whole concept of an age of consent exists. Radical gender theory rejects that learning, all of that hard-won knowledge, and why? So that scumbag insurance companies and scumbag unscrupulous doctors and loathsome sleazy politicians can make a bunch of money and get a bunch of power. If you think you're being moral and virtuous by feeding your own children into that meat grinder of human darkness, be assured that you are actually doing the opposite, and the bill will come due one day. You will have a scarred, mutilated, horrifically damaged adult child who will come to you for an explanation as to why you allowed this monstrous evil to be done to them. And what will you say? That you just wanted to do what was fashionable at the time? Well, good luck with that, I guess. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Have a delightful, edifying weekend with those you love. See you next week. Only 28 days of Pride Month to go. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.